If you enjoy animated films, you probably like the movies about GRU and the Minions. But do you really know all the bad things and sad moments that happened in GRU's life before he finally had a real family and could be happy? The first thing that definitely made GRU's life worse than most people's was the fact that his family consisted basically of him and a mother who didn't like her own son at all. Despite having a family tree that showed the roots of little felonious GRU had been linked to villainy for centuries, the young boy grew up in a family environment where he was constantly humiliated. For instance, in Despicable Me 3, our favorite villain states that he believes his father died of a heartbreak because of him, since that's what Marlena told her own son. Additionally, when the little boy revealed to his mother that one day he would go to the moon, she said NASA wasn't hiring monkeys anymore, which, although funny to us, is certainly very sad to hear, especially coming from your own mother. This shows that Marlena didn't consider GRU to be on the same level as other human beings, comparing him to irrational animals. It was in this heavy environment that he grew up and became a bitter and sad man, making it clear that besides his natural tendency to be a villain, it was unlikely he would become anything else with such a cruel mother. But of course, this isn't the only tragic thing that happened in the life of the world's greatest ex-villain that we're going to talk about today, so get ready for another Cinewave. As we see throughout the Despicable Me movie franchise, we discover that in fact, GRU's father and mother separated when he and his twin brother were just babies. Apparently, each parent randomly chose a child. In fact, maybe Robert, GRU's father, took the other baby because both had the same hair color. Of course, this is just a theory. But the fact is that the franchise's protagonist didn't even know he had a father, which made him grow up without a paternal reference. Additionally, his mother never remarried and preferred to have several boyfriends, even after she was already old, which meant that the little attention she gave her son was almost nothing. And of course, GRU missed having his father by his side to guide him in the world of crime, which never happened. Both Marlena and Robert bitterly regretted their choices, since GRU resembled his father, a great villain, while Drew resembled his mother, who had no vocation for the world of crime despite being such a mean woman. So, knowing that his father was actually one of the greatest villains of his time must have been shocking for GRU, who imagined how his life could have been if he had grown up under Robert's guidance instead of Marlena's. And if you're also a fan of Despicable Me and Minions, in honor of the brother GRU didn't even know existed, today we'll comment below with #Drew. Despite being one of our favorite animated film characters, GRU is not exactly synonymous with beauty. Due to his unconventional appearance, we can deduce that the future boss of the Minions had a tough life at school in the 70s. For example, in a flashback, we see GRU recalling the real reason he couldn't talk romantically to other women since when he was a little boy, probably before the Minions appeared in his life, he tried to confess his feelings to a girl in his class that he liked. However, when he touched the girl, all the schoolyard children simply ran away in panic, as if the boy had some kind of fatal, highly contagious disease. This must have been one of the most traumatic moments in GRU's life, making him even less willing to relate to other people, especially his peers. Similarly, shortly after, already with the Minions in his life, we see the mini-boss revealing his dream of being a supervillain, and not only does everyone laugh at him, but they also throw paper balls at him in the middle of the class, making fun of the boy once again. All this shows how difficult GRU's childhood and teenage years were, and how he must have gone through many other humiliating and embarrassing situations at his school. To complete the cycle of suffering for the mini-boss of the Minions, we see that when GRU finally thought things in his life would go right and he could join the group he had idolized since he was young, the Vicious Six, he actually had another big disappointment. After being mistaken for a dwarf and receiving an invitation to participate in the selection for the new member of the sextet, we see that the boy is received with total disbelief by the group of supervillains. As if that wasn't enough, the group still humiliates the young GRU, and they all laugh at him because of his ambitions to be a member of the group and his dreams. And, as we've mentioned and will mention again shortly, this wasn't the only or last time someone would mock the future supervillain's dreams. But besides doing all this to the mini-boss, later in the same movie, we see the group tying the teenage GRU to the clock hands, and as time passed and the hands moved apart, the boy would feel increasing pain. Remembering that all of this happened before the boy even turned 13 years old. Certainly, this is a lot of suffering for someone so young. The life of the Minions boss was definitely not easy. As we've discussed, our favorite villain never had contact with his father and only discovered his existence after he had already passed away. During this phase, as we see in Minions 2, there was a small glimmer of hope when the young boy met his idol, Willie Knuckles, in person. The former leader of the Vicious Six became the father figure that the mini-boss never had in his life. guiding him in the ways of villainy and even taking him on a heist to steal the painting of the Mona Lisa, which was kept in the Bank of Evil's vault. However, this period of happiness for the young and troubled boy was short-lived, as Knuckles ended up suffering severe burns while saving him and was hospitalized. Shortly after, GRU received the news that his mentor, and up until then his only father figure, had died in prison, making the boy feel completely alone once again, even though he had 899 minions by his side. However, none of them could replace the role of a father. Then, after suffering and mourning for Knuckles, the boy discovers that he is alive and reunites with him. But when we see the adult GRU in all the Despicable Me movies, we don't see any trace of his relationship with Knuckles, indicating that at some point after 1976, the supervillain did indeed kick the bucket, probably from old age, causing GRU to lose someone important in his life once again. This would have left him feeling lonely and sad all over again. Our villain's life really is a saga full of pain and suffering. Poor Felonious. If you've made it this far, you're definitely a fan of animated shows and movies, so don't waste any time. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next videos. At some point, not yet specified, we see that GRU ends up attending a school for supervillains, probably after Knuckles' actual death. This would have been a place where he could have made friends and progressed emotionally. In fact, we see that when he participated in the talent show, he did very well and was celebrated by many students in the audience. However, after all that, everything indicates that the Minions boss's life didn't go well for him. When he arrived at the alumni party, many made disapproving faces when they saw him, and he didn't join any of the conversation circles we see the students forming, showing that neither he misses his classmates nor do his old classmates miss him. GRU mentions that at one point, Maxime pulled down his pants in front of several people, embarrassing him. And probably from there, his cycle of shame and humiliation that followed him since childhood continued, starting with his mother, his old schoolmates, and even including the Vicious Six. This shows that not much changed for our favorite villain in the end. He continued to be a target of ridicule among everyone and wasn't popular among his peers and girls. All of this probably contributed to the antisocial behavior we see in the character as an adult, as he didn't get along with any of his neighbors, at least not until his daughters came into his life, and if we stop to think, even after meeting them, things didn't exactly get easier for GRU. As an adult, we see that Agnes's father had several enemies who mostly looked down on the villain. For instance, Vector didn't consider the Minions' boss to be a worthy rival and despised him, knowing that all of his gadgets, like his ship and impenetrable fortress funded by his father's money, the manager of the Bank of Evil, were better than anything GRU had, so much so that he shamelessly stole the shrink ray from the villain. And when Lucy's future husband tried to enter Vector's lair with just a button, he easily repelled our favorite villain's threat. He even used his butt to operate the keypad, showing how little he saw GRU as a threat. Another example of someone who had total disdain for GRU, even after he proved himself a capable villain, was his old school rival, Maxime. During the alumni reunion, the character mocks the Minions boss's plan to steal the moon in front of everyone, pointing to the lunar satellite in the sky, ridiculing GRU as he likely did many times while they were in school together. All of this shows how the life of the Despicable Me protagonist was never easy and how he was always despised and humiliated. And he only found the path to true happiness after meeting Margot, Edith, and Agnes, which led him to marry and have another child, finally finding the path to happiness after so much suffering. This was the sad and tragic story of Felonious GRU, our favorite villain. And since we know that when a video we like ends, we feel sad, we want you to stay happy, so we've chosen 2 amazing videos for you to check out when this one finishes. Just click on the one you prefer. Thanks, and see you next time.